yourself hype, for it's time to fly with John and Steve.
Woo!
Your Flycast!
That is the time indeed. Time to fly. I guess. Welcome to the Flycast, our weekly D&D podcast. Those of you who have been following for a while, thank you for stopping by. Anybody new watching live or on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, thank you so much for checking us out. We are just a couple of nerdy DMs who love playing Dungeons & Dragons, have a lot of DM experience, and have been talking about starting a podcast for a while, just kind of talking about our experiences, answering questions, and just, having fun. So that is what we are, what we're doing. Each week we kind of pick a different topic to start off with. We'll go ahead and just chat about that for a while, and then second half of the show, take some questions from our Discord. If you're not in the Discord, go ahead and click the link, join up, leave questions throughout the week. Can always leave questions in chat. We'll try and get to any of that as well. But starters, let's just go ahead and kick right off. Today, our topic is battle maps versus theater of the mind. Been kind of high on these like versus themes, getting to just kind of like juxtapose two different ways of doing things, talk about it, what we like about each, and why. Yeah, I mean, I guess battle maps is one way of going about things, where you kind of map everything out. If you're playing at the table, maybe you'll have you'll have miniatures, you'll have drawing, maybe you'll have like terrain pieces, and then there's of course the online version of that, where you've just got like your online tokens, your online virtual tabletop or whatever, versus theater of the mind, where you just describe things and kind of go about that way. So I think one thing that's really interesting, Steve, one of the things that really started to get you back into D&D was watching Chris Perkins running Curse of Strahd, all theater of the mind, which I think is really interesting.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
So kind of what are your thoughts on the topic, I guess?
Well, I try to balance it myself, but I mean, if sometimes I've even considered challenging myself to do it like that. But like when he did it, like it was just for me, it forced me as a person to literally imagine everything that him and his players were talking about. I was imagining what the players looked like after they described them. I was just listening to them talk and interact with one another, almost like reading a book for me. So like whenever they would, even when they would have their battles, I mean, you could just picture these crazy battles, just like going back and forth in your head. So, I mean, for me, it actually helped reignite my passion for the game, because when I was a kid, I used to run them for just me and a friend. Because back then, Dungeons and Dragons was the devil. So we had to hide our love.
Yeah.
So we would basically we started off with like 4 people in the group. It was, and of course, like any typical D&D group, one person gets basically forced into a DM's chair, which was me. So and then we did a lot of the theater of the mind, because back then we didn't have, I mean, we were poor kids. We were lucky to have like maybe a couple of pairs of dice, a D20, some character sheets. And then when we ran out of character sheets, we made our own character sheets. So theater of the mind was extremely important back then. Not as much now, but still, there's something about like having moments of theater of the mind that just get you. Like one of my favorite ones recently was when we were in I was the player this time, and we were in Storm Castle, and we had this chase through the through the streets, There was a map, but there wasn't a map. So there was like just to show us like where we were at. But this battle and this chasing on rooftops was all happening in our minds. As a player, for me, that was exciting because it took away the limitation of I move 5 feet this direction, I make
Hmm.
5 feet that direction. I'm literally, as a person, I am casting spells and I am jumping from rooftop to rooftop. I'm literally misty stepping on a roof because let's be honest, Desmond, not a very acrobatic fella. Uh,
Well, he ended up falling through a roof in that encounter.
yeah. So that's the kind of thing that I think Theater of the Mind does for me personally. Granted, it's always nice to have some reference point, but at the same time, when you get some of those kind of combats, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's really interesting. I think the natural inclination, especially online, is to always have a map for basically anything that you're doing because you just can, right? Like,
right,
it's so easy to do, and it gives you sitting alone at your computer something to click on and move around, I guess. But I think it's there's something really interesting about as soon as like you start a campaign or whatever and you ask a player to describe their character and they'll describe it and everyone can get a really cool picture of what this character is, what they look like, who they are, some really interesting kind of lore behind them or whatever. uh, and then like everyone will have a unique picture of what that character is, and then literally the second that anything exists to represent that character, now you're no longer picturing what you pictured, you're always
right,
picturing that thing. So like
right,
Desmond is not what Desmond was described to me as. Desmond is that one JPEG that I'm looking at every single game. Like that's who he is. Or like you can even take that then on the tabletop, like the physical pieces, right? So like in
right,
our home game, we've got 3D printed physical miniatures, but like yeah, I mean Dash is not your character. Dash is not how he was described necessarily. He is that piece of plastic that we look at when we see him there, and it's great because you can actually get a really cool visual representation. It's nice so that you can actually like see physically where you are and plan your moves and be very strategic and have a more tactical feel to combat. But at the same time, there is definitely that detriment of, well, now like that image of this character or of this place or whatever doesn't exist. All we have now is this picture.
right,
And it is like you were saying, kind of like reading a book or whatever, right? You'll read a book with a description of a character or whatever, and then you'll watch the movie, and the movie will be a little bit different maybe than the picture that you had in your head, and now that character is always going to look like that movie character in your mind. You can never really
right.
get back to whatever you had before, which I think is really interesting. I think that's one thing that's really good about Theater of the Mind. Not that you should go all one or all the other. I think having a mix, as you said at the beginning, is really a good thing. But I think that is something really interesting about it. Something else that I found really interesting is just how quick you can move through things when you're just doing Theater of the Mind. Like, people aren't thinking, okay, well, if I move exactly here, no, it's just like boom, 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 which I think is really nice too
You're reacting.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I've got some like my players. Like I, one of the things I've been trying to work on is that striking that balance. But there is one thing that I've noticed, like in the Curse of Strahd on Sunday's game with the newer guys, they do a lot of Theater of the Mind because there's not always a need for a map. So I've been trying to do that just to
Hmm.
experiment. Anytime they see a map, though, they're like, "We're in combat." I'm like, I think I've
Yeah.
conditioned them, think I Pavloved them into seeing a map, and they're like, "Ah, it's time to get our fisticuffs on," and to a certain degree, it's right. So I think I need to tweak it a little bit too. Maybe have some of those, but
You can always try and have an encounter that's like a combat encounter that is still Theater of the Mind. Like I think
right,
the first time, I can't remember if the actual book is like this or not, but I watched one of the first things that I saw on a stream was a group running Lost Mines of Phandelver, and the
Hmm.
very first encounter is just four goblins ambushing at the side of the road, and they ran that completely
Mm.
theater the mind. And then they later went into this goblin cave that was mapped out and everything, but that encounter, because like, do you really need a map for four goblins, even at level one?
No,
No, you
it's a
don't.
good idea though.
They're in the woods and they're shooting at you. If you can run up to them and whatnot, and we'll kind of fudge how far away you are. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work. We can kind of be a little loosey goosey with the rules there, and just kind of figure it out as we
Right.
go. But like, yeah, because four goblins and four level one adventurers, that could take 30 minutes on a gridded map, and be very meticulous. Or it could take about 5 minutes of rapid fire. Just react. What are you doing? I attack. Okay, cool. Roll your attack.
Right.
And just kind of move right along. It kind of also helps, like, it's really interesting how one of the most exciting things that can happen is getting into combat, right? Like, that should be high intensity, exciting, fun, but it's also one of the things that can certainly drag a lot, and
It can
it
slog.
is the one thing that takes the longest by far, right? Where it's like, oh, this is like the high intensity, I'm exerting all my effort, and it's taking us a very long time to get through it. Whereas if you just kind of pull back and run that theater of the mind, you get that feel, right? That just like, oh shit, I don't know what's going on. I attack, I guess. Okay, great. Go ahead and roll your longsword attack. That hits.
Roll
Go
it
ahead and roll
along.
damage. Okay,
Right.
we're gonna move right on forward. Um, and it's, yeah, it can be kind of cool, and then you can like picture exactly what's going
You get the
on, and
adrenaline going.
yeah, exactly. I think that's a really cool way. Like, obviously, that doesn't necessarily work if you've got, you know, large group of enemies and there's complicated terrain, and you're
Yeah,
certainly gonna
that's a little
want,
harder.
yeah. But like, you can definitely get away with it sometimes, and it's kind of fun to do.
I actually just wrote that down because I know I'm bad about that. I actually wrote down minor encounters can be theater of the mind. So that
Yeah,
way I can have just a little blurb. So that way because this is all about us always trying to get better too.
yeah,
So
yeah, for
like you
sure.
make little notes to like, you're like, that's a good idea. I don't do that enough. And
I've
then
done that before. I haven't done it in a while either. And yeah, I mean,
we
especially
get in a groove.
I think a big part of it too really is the online thing also, right? Like,
It's
at the
so
table
easy
it's
to have a
so much
map.
easier to just run theater of the mind or something, but we do that so rarely
Right.
when we're at the table. It's like, look, even if I don't have anything prepared, in fantasy grounds, I have to click three buttons and I have a random map up for you guys.
Right.
And then
Right.
one more button, everything's already in the combat tracker no matter what I do. So like, we may as well just use it because it's there. But yeah, I mean,
I
it
think
can be really exciting.
Well, I think one thing to help inspire theater of the mind, because this is something that Jordan actually brought to my attention, because he's like, maybe we should start. Like he's talking about the next campaign in Eberron. He's like, maybe we should start out in a small town because it's easier. I said, maybe for John, that's not easier for me.
Mm,
John will plan out this elaborate small town
right.
and have owners of the names. If I have a big city, I have a name generator, a magic generator, and I have a picture, and then I will bullshit my way through the rest of it
Yeah.
because that's what I do.
Yeah.
So it's like I actually like the idea of you guys going into this big city for, and maybe talking about your characters on session zero. Why are you going to Shard? And then like trying to get motivations and stuff to help tie it in. I mean, everybody's different, but what I guess my original point was sometimes what I like to do is I either will drop a picture of a map or I'll
Mm-hmm.
drop just a picture
Mm-hmm.
to like help stimulate that thing. Like you go into a shop, you see a small dwarven man. Midgard, I did that all the time where I'm like the dwarven wizard guy was gay and he hit on Billy and Jimmy.
Yeah, I
And it
remember that.
was and it was hilarious. And
Yeah.
and like we just played off of all three of us during that point. It was all theater of the mind, and they ended up getting a large picture painted of them all nude hanging above this wizard's bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just nuts.
Yeah.
Or
I,
the
oh, sorry. Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. I was thinking like when I first time I ran Curse of Strahd for you guys, and we had brand new players, and Mutt was a sorcerer, and you guys got out of this really, I mean, honestly, a very deadly encounter. I actually killed somebody in my last game with the same encounter. The vampire spawn in the coffin maker shop,
Mm-hmm.
and his character was just, I think him and the character was just over it. He's like, I set fire to the whole place. And in that particular storyline, Irina's brother, I mean, I was running up fairly close to the book at the
Mm-hmm.
time, was looking for her, and all of a sudden you got this big billowing fire and smoke in this decent sized town, but of course everybody's going to see it. And
Right.
all of a sudden you guys are surrounded by guards.
Fuck those vampires.
And you guys have this theater of the moment where it's like, what do you guys do? You're
Mm-hmm.
not ready to get taken in, and everybody just fucking scatters.
Yeah.
And it was fun just going through every single one of you guys is like how you guys were reacting, and that was just so much. That was a very memorable moment for me. Just that idea of you guys just going, "Oh God, somebody fucked up. We've just drawn all this attention to ourselves, and this town is not necessarily. I mean, the whole world is a shithole to a certain degree, and when you got people looking for you because you're different, you got a dark skinned elf, you got a giant of a man,
Mm-hmm.
you got a dwarf. I mean, from a primarily human thing. I mean, you're easy to be
Right.
spotted. So disappearing in the shadows and using your rogue tricks to get around people, take cover, and pull cows up and not be noticed, and a big guy just boom, 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 just running through the town, stealing somebody's cloak and attempting and hiding, so on and so on. I could go for hours, but those were memorable moments for me because it was all done in our imagination, and
Mm-hmm.
it was hilarious. It was everybody at the table just having a good time. So, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think what it continues to come back to is just like that theater of the mind allows you to move forward, allows that adrenaline to get pumping, and like I think it really just kind of let you sink in more, if that makes sense, right? Like, where if you could just kind of like forget about the peripherals and just kind of put yourself in your character's shoes and whatnot, and be there, and then try and just play this out, and kind of really let this feel alive or something like that. It's yeah, as opposed to I'm very aware that I'm looking at a map on a screen, and it almost feels a little video gamey, especially like, again, I love Fantasy Grounds, but like
Fantastic.
especially when you're not even looking at your character sheet, really. You're just dragging dice over, and it does everything for you, and then you say, okay, go ahead and do your next thing, and just kind of ignore what else is happening for the next 15 minutes. So
Right.
it's yeah, I think it definitely does help draw people in. Again, I know we've been talking a lot about the theater of the mind specifically, but there definitely is a time and place for a map too, right? Like I think,
Very much
um,
so.
I think it's very, very difficult. Definitely not impossible, right? You've seen Perkins do it, but very, very difficult to always run theater of the mind. I think,
I don't think I've ever seen him run like as many creatures as we do though. Like
right. Like I just kind of
he's
think
done
to
it in the
some of your
background.
Yeah, I just kind of think to some of your big fights, right? Like you like to do city sieges
Military
and that sort of thing
battles.
a lot. Like I don't know how you can possibly do that theater of the mind unless you've got like a freaking spreadsheet back there somewhere.
Yeah, man.
Like,
That is nuts. That is absolutely the point of like a good map, because like if you got like a large, there's been several encounters that I've had like just so many people that could go in there. Now I could probably do something in the background, maybe bullshit my way through some of it, but where's the fun in that?
mhm,
This is a point where people need the visual. They need that Xander goes to one corner of the city, blows the guard's horn, half the guards go somewhere else, Xander
mhm.
fucks off. and you get that visual at that point going, wow, that was really sound strategy. One
Mhm.
quick blurb before what I want to go back to the theater of mind just real quick.
Mhm.
I introduced the Sunday Crew to Janice the Tattooed Horde.
I'm sure that
No
went
map
fun.
necessary.
Yeah, no,
No
definitely
map
no map
necessary.
necessary for that. Good lord, dude. Well, I'm sure they had
Oh,
fun with that. Did they kill her?
they all got nope. They all got
Okay.
tattoos on their arms that
And
says
BJ's?
"Blind Gods."
Oh, okay.
Nope. After I described her and I had her take out her false teeth to offer, it was. I'll leave it at that.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah, if you want to catch it, it's on the VOD. It's pretty funny.
that'll be at twitch.tv/Stevo the DMO.
Hitting on a bunch of,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
hilarious.
Gosh.
But yeah, man, siege maps are, yeah, dude, it was a good time.
Yeah.
I like to keep a little history, in my games.
Yeah.
Some things just automatically happen. Some things don't.
Yeah.
But I
I
wouldn't have that encounter with Megan in the game.
She'd probably just roll her eyes at you.
I mean, she'd probably rolling her eyes at me now. God.
Probably. But yeah, I think like I do like to run a tactical game, which does require a map, but at the same time, like, man, I don't know. There's something to be said about that just kind of adrenaline and the feel and the flow of not using it. I honestly, like, now that we're talking about this, I might try and run more Theater Than Mine stuff, to be honest, because I don't know. I just think it can work really, really well.
There's a good balance between the two. I mean, even with Theater Than Mine, you still have initiatives. I think the cool thing about a map too is it slows it down for you and I, where we can think, because now we have to play these characters to the best of our abilities at the same time, trying to balance things for them.
Right, and I want to make it challenging for my players too, so I'm not going to have all of my villains just be mindless idiots. Like, they're going to try and kill you. So yeah, like, especially if you're running a powerful caster, right? Like, you need that time to be able to figure out what they're gonna do. It's rough.
Right. Like, what am I gonna do? What spell do I need to cast?
Yeah.
And as much as we've given Adrian a hard time about it, spell casting can take some time.
Yeah.
And it can take time, because if somebody does something before your turn, and we don't always just blurt out what we're gonna do, because of what's the fun in that.
Right.
So your spell can get cucked, which you spent like so long trying to prepare, and you're like, oh shit, I guess I can't trip because I'm fucked. It's like, but yeah, that's the biggest difference. I like having some battle maps where it gives that representation. I want that big fight feel. Like, I agree with 100% that small encounters like that, even for a high level party, that gives me an idea, because like, you get a higher level party, who's to say they're not on the road, and we have 4 human males with crossbows try to rob them.
Yeah,
that could go 100 different ways. They could either, they could be bandit stats, whatever. Who cares? Just because the party is a higher level doesn't mean that bandits occasionally don't try to do something to them. And those bandits might have messed up.
Right, and that's a perfect situation where there's literally no reason to throw that on a map, because, like, okay, if the party decides to get into a combat, okay, cool, well, in half a round, they're all dead, so we don't really need to do that, but we can kind of play out what's going on there. You can even do it with a larger scale, too. Tracy was just saying in chat, I love in our home game when you had us clear out the knolls, when you guys got all that land from the king. Oh, were you not there? I couldn't remember. Basically,
for that.
The party had been given this land, but the land was overrun with gnolls. There were like a few hundred of them, or like, it was an insane amount of gnolls.
Wow.
But the party was also like, I don't know, you guys were like level 10 or something like that at that point. Like, you were pretty high level, maybe 12, I don't know. You were fairly high level to where like a null stat is literally nothing at that point. So what I did was like, yeah, there were like a couple hundred nulls there or whatever, but the party was just kind of cleaving through them. And so like we weren't doing, like I didn't run it mechanically the way that combat normally is. Like I did have rules to it and whatnot, but essentially like I had the party making attack rolls, and if they hit, they essentially cleared out like 6 nulls or something like that. And then for the nulls, I rolled just a few random attacks. Whichever ones hit did just a certain amount of damage and spread it out amongst the party, and just kind of moved forward like that, just like with a running total of how many nulls were left, and just kind of rewarded creativity as well. Like, okay, like tell me how it is that you are going to try and slay 15 nulls right now. Oh yeah, cool. I'm gonna take my sword and run it through this one and then chop off that one's head and do a flying kick over here, and it's like, awesome, cool, I like that a lot. I'm gonna run in, jump on the ground and slam my staff into the ground and cast Thunder Wave or whatever. Awesome, I love it. So that was a lot of fun, and I think that is a very good example of a time when we used theater of the mind to kind of like, I'm sorry, I'm not putting 200 nulls on the map.
That is so like especially with the PC stuff right now, trying to put like 20 things on the map can sometimes be difficult.
Yeah.
So I told myself the first thing I do once my first paycheck, I'm buying a processor.
yeah.
And then I'm gonna start building. So that's my project for the next month or two. But yeah, like I mean, like I said, it's a fine balance. It's like trying to strike it without like just automatically. I guess there's some things that you can't avoid. If you got a map, even if you roll out the table map or put down the laminated map, you know, the players are probably gonna be like, yeah, we're possibly going to be or we're more than likely going to be in a combat situation. I guess there's not really much getting around that, but at the same time, maybe they talk their way out of something, maybe not. Who knows? But I do like, you know, situations where there is I love those big battles where you just sometimes, you know, there's a siege, or maybe you're the one participating in the siege, and you know, we can run it like maybe roll. And I think I did this in Midgard where I rolled for one group of orcs and then another group of orcs against the city soldiers, and just kind of did like, you know, who had the highest roll, that platoon was just wiped.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. But I like having those visual representations too. So just trying to find the right balance is always going to be a challenge, but not impossible either.
Yeah. Well, with that, we're right about halfway through, so we're going to go ahead and take a break for about 3 minutes or so. We'll come right back, answer some questions. If you got any more questions, you can throw them in the Discord or throw them in chat right here. We'll try and get to them, and we will be back.
Yay! Yay. Cheeto break.
We are back. Welcome back to the Flycast. To the second half of the show here. Go ahead and move forward, grab some questions from anything you want to throw in chat, and then we'll grab questions here from our Discord as well. Let's go ahead and just pull those on up. Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what we got here in Discord. Is obviously, as always, a good amount of questions from Mutt, but there's a few others in here as well. I haven't read all of these in advance, so let's go ahead and just kind of start knocking some of these out here. We already kind of answered that first question here. We got what advantages does each type have based on your experiences, and what challenges do each one bring with them? Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of talked about that mostly on the front end. So let's just go ahead and move forward. How do they affect player involvement, specifically with ability checks, and how do you feel they affect player actions and decisions? I think we touched on this a little bit, but I think one of the biggest things is players are a lot quicker in Theater of the Mind and a lot slower when there's a map. I think that's the biggest thing, honestly.
I think it's big because like sometimes I don't even mean to do it, but sometimes as a player I might just lose my concentration.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm forced into a situation like a theater of the mind, like my brain just has to just move instead of waiting for someone else's turn. I'm having to just move that much quicker. So it actually
Right.
engages me.
Yeah, I think
And
I think so too, which is so like it's counter to what we would originally think, but like
right.
I totally agree, right? If you got that map and people are taking a minute, it can be like okay,
You
like
don't
I've
even mean to do it.
yeah, you kind of have an idea of what you're gonna do, and then um, there's one person who just can't seem to make up their mind, and then they finally do. But the thing that they did was cast fireball on 15 creatures that your DM is frantically trying to figure out what's still alive and what isn't, and then 30 minutes later you kind of forgot what it was that you were gonna do anyway, and you're thinking about something else. As opposed to like there's just so much like more in the moment and a lot more engaging
Right.
about that theater of the mind. Like I think it might even be that you're engaging your brain more too, right? Because you're trying to
Right.
picture exactly what's happening. You kind of have to be more focused. Maybe that's part of it too.
Makes me remember like making a note that at some point I still want to do a no magic campaign. I
Yeah.
think it would be an interesting challenge. I honestly do.
It would be really interesting. I think yeah, man, I think that would be really interesting. That'd be kind of tough.
It'd be
No
very
magic,
hard.
no magic at all, or just like no casters.
I think how I would do it is I would do like herbalism, like
Mm-hmm.
for healing,
Mm-hmm.
and then do it that way and just
Yeah.
have if there are like almost like a who's I keep thinking back, but it's not back. But, Lord of the Rings style magic where it's there but
Yeah.
it's subtle.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I
there's
think
only
it'd be
there's only yeah, like Lord of the Rings style magic. You've got Gandalf, who's obviously capable of magic, but he's not even like casting spells. He just is magic and does magic things. And then the
right.
elves are capable of magic, but it's different and weird. Like no one's casting fireball in that. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That'd be
like
interesting.
dawn, like light spells.
Yeah.
Like I think in the original Lord, well, not the original, but in like the Hobbit movies, Gandalf cast a fireball, but it wasn't anything that was like like a 20-foot radius explosion.
Right. Right.
So it's something that I definitely want to toy around with. I just know a lot of our players, they love their magic, but at the same time,
It's an
we could probably be
interesting
a little bit more
idea.
theater of the mind.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of what the Starfinder game is right now, because I said no
True.
magic. Like you're learning magic, you're discovering it as you guys go. But yeah, there's kind of that stipulation on it right
Very
now.
true.
It's interesting. Yeah. Question from Koa: what is a time where you wished you had a battle map but only had theater of the mind?
I
Or do you
don't
have
think I've
one?
had that. I don't think I've had that happen because when certain things happen with the players, sometimes I can just act that out with them.
Yeah.
Like if there's a bar fight and I don't have a map, I mean, I like the thing with Fantasy Grounds, you scramble for 5 or 6 seconds, say bears, you can find something. But
Yeah.
some things don't need it. If you got 3 players who go down a wrong alley and get mugged, I think this goes back to what you brought up earlier. A small encounter with like 2 or 3 of the players don't need a map.
Yeah.
You can literally act that out where you don't necessarily need it at that point. So I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever had a point where I'm like, God, I wish I had a map for this. Generally, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm so retentive and try to be so well prepared that if I have a planned combat I have a map for it. Or if I have a
Mhm.
random encounter, I have random encounter maps.
Yeah.
But if I was in person, that might be a little bit more difficult to do.
Yeah, I do that too. I normally don't really have that issue too much. In person, I'll just throw down the battle map and, like, I have a map. I'll just throw that down. I might draw a road real quick or something like that. I have had times where, like for the most part, I mean, I'm like you, right? If I feel like there's going to be an encounter here, or if there's a potential for an encounter, I have a map already made for it. Um, but there have been times where I've been a little caught unaware and had to like draw something out real quick. And I think I just always have the tools available to do that sort of thing. Like I always have my mat if we're in person, and then online it's just so easy. But there have been times where I'm trying to describe something and it just isn't hitting for whatever reason, and like I'll have to draw something out and hope that works or something like that. So
Right.
I feel like sometimes there are times, and I think that is one issue with theater of the mind, is it does lend to the potential for people to not really understand what you're saying. Like, I mean, like last night with people missing the fact that there was just a door with a handle that they can open. I
I
still
think
don't
we
know
were
if
all
I
kind
didn't
of
say it.
tired
Like
too.
I'm really not quite sure. But like
I think everybody.
that is a thing. That is an issue. Like that does happen sometimes, and then there's kind of miscommunication and not quite understanding, and you get a little confused and whatnot. But I don't know. I think it's worth the risk, honestly.
I'm pretty sure most of us, except for Jordan, was just kind of half out of our minds because everybody was tired for some reason or another.
Yeah,
So that might have like it was, I think it was more comprehension of what you said because you probably
maybe I
said
don't
it.
really know.
You
I
probably
can't even
said it. I
remember
haven't watched the VOD, but I'm like,
either.
yeah, it is what it
Yeah,
is. Sometimes it's going to happen occasionally where it's like, what? Wait, what? And
that's
you
a
might feel
question.
silly for half a second, but
That's a question though. What do you feel about like dungeon crawling as theater of the mind, or
that would be
like
very
dungeon
hard for
delving?
me
Yeah.
because, like, when I'm dungeon, and maybe just because I've never challenged myself before, but I would have to have some kind of like I'd have to have some kind of like narrative type for me, at least
Hmm.
blurbs. Like when it comes to dungeon crawling, I am very map dependent because I like to scroll out a map so that way I can see it. And then, of course, if I see it, I want the players to be able to see it. I will say I'm very
Right.
dependent on maps for dungeon crawls.
I I haven't decided if I'm gonna go this route yet or not. I'm really back and forth on it. But the dungeon that you guys are currently in the One Woman Adventure Tour, which we're playing on Saturday, I'm I'm strongly considering having like drawing out certain rooms, but like the overall dungeon not giving you guys a map for. I have it
That'd
mapped
be
out on my
interesting.
end. But I'm considering that. I know like way back at when D&D all started with Gary Gygax and whatnot, like
Right.
the party mapper or whatever, like the party cartographer was a role. Like they wouldn't necessarily draw out their dungeon. Gary would say you walk north 25 feet and you can go to the east or to the west. There's doorways either way, and somebody would be drawing it as he says that, so that the party then
That's
has a
interesting.
map. But that also like plays out like, okay, if you actually were in this dungeon, you don't have a top-down god view of it. Someone's drawing it out so that you know where you are in this thing that you're exploring as you go, which I think is a really interesting idea. Not sure how it would work, but that's kind of I'm throwing that around in my brain as something that I might do.
This is
So
actually very
just kind of wondering.
interesting. Yeah. No, I like that idea. I mean, I think I would play test that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, you guys would be my playtest, honestly.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
like, worst
yeah.
case scenario, I've got it mapped out. I can just be like, okay, everyone take 5. I'll draw it
Yeah,
real
fuck
quick or
it.
something.
Fuck
But,
it.
yeah, I
Right.
don't know. I'm considering it. So, yeah, just
I
figured I'd
mean,
say that.
we have a rogue in that party. I mean, push comes to shove, he'd be the one to die from a trap.
Yeah. Yeah, well, between
Womp womp.
him and the ranger, the two of them would be sneaking forward.
Oh yeah, quiet. Yeah.
Yeah.
You keep me way in the back, which sometimes can suck because the plate is so slow. So
Tracy says that sounds super fun. I'm totally down for an unmapped dungeon crawl. I don't know. We might try it then. We'll see.
I try it. Yeah,
We'll see.
it definitely has appeal.
Back to questions. Got one from Heimdall Site. What's your personal balance for maps? Do you prefer maps only for combat and theater of the mind for most everything else? And then, actually, there's kind of a second question in here, which I'll wait. I'll kind of say that as a second question. So, what's your personal balance for maps? Do you prefer maps only for combat and theater of the mind for most everything else? Or kind of what do you think there? I know
Really
we've both been
depends on
talking
this.
about there being being like a balance or whatever, but just kind of how you feeling there.
Really depends on the session for me
Yeah.
because if I know there is a very like a lot of times when I've had a lot of downtime sessions and shopping sessions, I may have one picture and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way it'll be mainly theater to mind. Now, if it's a combat slog, because like if you're going towards the end of the game, and of course there's this big battle, I had probably what 4 maps for that, and I also had 2 pictures representing, that flying mountain with the thunder and the rain, and then I had the castle with the thunder and the rain because it made sense to me, and I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to like project that image on you guys. But honestly, for me, I try to keep it 50-50, but again, it depends on the session. If the
Yeah.
session's going more combat heavy, I'm probably going to have some maps. If it's more narrative, I might have a picture or something to help stimulate the brain, and then we work it out from there. That's how I normally do things.
Yeah, I'd say the way that I normally do things is I have a map for every combat, and then most other things are all theater of the mind. It really depends on where I'm at, though. I know when we first started doing stuff online, I was obsessed with this idea that because we can have a map for everything, like I just always had a map. And I mean, like, if you guys
Mhm.
go into a random shop, obviously I'm not going to have that prepped, so that'll end up being theater of the mind. But, like, I would be like, you guys all start in a tavern, so I have a tavern map. Why? I don't know. Nothing happened in there. You talked to some people here and there. I guess it was fun for you to be able to move a token around on a screen. But,
Right.
otherwise, I don't know. It's just there. So, like, I go through phases, I feel like, where I kind of want to lean on something a little bit more. But for the most part, I normally have a map for every combat, and then everything else is theater of the mind. I do like having city maps. I like that a lot. I
Right.
don't know. I think we do definitely differ there. You like having like an image for a city, like an idea. Sometimes there is kind of like a layout of it involved, but like I like the city to be completely planned. Which isn't always feasible, but that's something that I like to do when I can anyway. But like it's not a map that you're then moving your tokens around on. It's just so that you have a layout of the city.
Yeah, you know where you're going.
Yeah, I think that's more important for something like, Dragon Heist, right? Where everything is
Hmm.
happening in that one city. If you're just kind of passing through, whatever. Um, but yeah, I think online I use maps a lot. Probably more than I even should, to be honest. And at home, it's literally just for big battles, and that's it. So, second half of the question: how much of your planning goes into creating or finding maps? That's a big one.
A lot.
Yeah.
I am very, very visual when it comes to things,
Mm-hmm.
and actually it's not a slog for me. It's actually a joy because when I see it, I generally know it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah.
I will take my time and just look at different maps because I will be honest, I don't have the time to make my own, and I don't have the talent for it. So when I find other people's maps, I try to use them and represent them to the best that I can. And if it fits my situation, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very visual in that. I literally will be like perfect because in my mind somewhere I have an idea, whether it's subconscious or conscious, what this is going to entail, and that's what I go with. So I spend a lot of time looking at maps.
Where do you usually get them from? Just like Google or?
Google Images, Pinterest,
Mhm.
Imager sometimes, every now and a great then. But yeah, I go back and forth between three. So I sometimes if I have a planning session, a lot of it is, hey, I'm looking for a specific type of map. I know it when I see it. I
Yeah.
also do the same thing when I'm looking for images for NPCs and
Yeah.
tokens.
Yeah.
I spend time doing that too.
Yeah. I think I go back and forth. It depends. If I don't have a ton of time to like make a map, or it's something that I know should be able to find pretty easy. Yeah, either Pinterest or Google Images. And those are normally doesn't take me too long if I'm doing that. But if I'm making my own, definitely takes a while. And sometimes, like, I prefer my own because I can have complete control over it, right? I like to have control. That's part of why I like to DM, I think. I like to control what's going on. Um, and like, I mean, I'll just take like the Starfinder game. You cannot find a map of a crashed starship in a jungle. Doesn't exist on
Very
the internet.
difficult.
Doesn't exist.
Very difficult.
So it would have been
Yeah.
really nice if I took more time to go ahead and make my own. I just didn't have enough time when we did it, so you ended up with a crashed ship in a desert.
Right.
But like I really, really, really do like to make my own when I can. Yeah, I totally agree. I'd completely design every map. It's a video game designer in me. Yeah, I really like to do it. I use a bunch of different tools too. There's Wonder Draft. I use well, I don't use that much anymore, but I was using that for a time to make like overworld maps. I'll make battle maps with Photoshop sometimes. Like I've got a Photoshop file already created that's layered. It's got like 3 water layers, 3 mud, dirt, grass layers, and I'll just like use a mask and whatnot to erode where I want to like create dirt and rivers and whatnot, and I can do literally anything to it. I've got a whole ton of assets to just drop in trees and whatever else I need to.
That is a gift.
But then I've also got I got Campaign Cartographer 3, which is the mapping software. It works more like an AutoCAD software,
Oh,
and it's that's what I've been making maps with now. Whenever I do, it's great. Very not user friendly, but it's super powerful, and it's really cool. You can do literally anything with it, which is really really nice. But yeah, that takes a long ass time if I'm building my own maps.
well,
Um.
you got
Oh.
a gift with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's so much work. It really
The
is.
patience too.
I've also like I've gone back and forth too. I also do like the just like really minimalist look. Like when we were on Roll20, I really did like just drawing it in Roll20 also, just using those native tools and emulating literally just like that pen and paper drawn style. I
Right.
think that works really well also. So yeah, I mean you can do it fairly easily. But it is nice having nice maps too. I don't
I would get too
know.
caught up in the visual because I want it to look a certain way. Then I know myself, I'd get
Mhm.
frustrated with how it looked, and then I'd scrap it because I'd worked 4 hours on a pile of shit, and I'd be angry for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I want to go ahead and jump back to a question that I don't think we got to last time from Mutt. Um, just kind of an overall question. What will you usually personally defer to? Rules as written, or sage advice, or even personal interpretation?
Oh, good lord!
For me, I normally start off with rules as written, and if the rule is vague, I will, in the moment, I'll just make a ruling. But I'll a lot of times look up the sage advice because normally that exists to clarify vague rules. Sometimes it completely goes against what the player's handbook says, which is frustrating, but for the most part, it just exists to clarify vague rules. And since they are the rules designers, I listen to them for the most part. But there's definitely things that I just house rule on also, right? Like, taking a healing potion is always a full action. That's dumb. I don't like it. So I house rule against that. Just one example.
Oh man, I go back and forth because I try to play. For the most part, I try to play rules as written. But sometimes, if something's just really fucking cool, sell it to me, and then we'll see if it's within those bounds of the rules. How far are we stretching it?
Yeah.
If it's too out there, then no dice. But if you can make logical sense and it's something cool, we can try to workshop that. So I am a little bit more open for like creativity in that case. But I mean, there's also been plenty of times where I'm like, that's not what the spell says.
Right.
Like if we're in a combat, some like you, I have to make decisions, and then I
Mm-hmm.
have to be like, hey, if I'm wrong, hit me up after the game, show me the link. My bad. We'll try to go from there. But I go back and forth. I try to. I like the rule of cool theory, but not
Yeah.
everything can be rule of cool because then you have anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have a good structure and then go from there. If something is very heroic, or if it's a tense combat and somebody had like Jimmy, you know, message me asking about the Ring of Winter if this would keep everybody alive, and ordinarily I wouldn't tell a player yes or no. That combat was going south, and I'm like, yes, it
Right.
would. And he made a choice character decision that was really cool, which led to narrative stuff where people are popping on the back of this ice dragon. So that is where it's not necessarily rules as written. It's I'm trying to save the party at the same
Mm-hmm.
time I'm telling a really cool story and so on. So that's where I'm at. It's always a tough balance sometimes.
Yeah, I think I like to get the rule right because there should be a definitive answer. But in the
Right.
moment, sometimes like there's a lot of times where you just kind of have to make a decision and
And to
move
go with
on.
it.
Like I'm not looking it up. I'm not, or we just got to make a decision and move forward, and we'll figure it out later if we were wrong or not. Yeah. Okay, last question from Mutt. What's an example of one type working well between Battle Map and Theater of the Mind? What's an example of a time where you felt like you made the wrong call using one over the other?
I know it sounds kind of arrogant, but I don't think I've ever made a mistake on knowing or when to use either or because I normally go with my feelings.
Yeah.
If if it feels like it doesn't need a map,
Mm-hmm.
then it doesn't need a map. If I feel like it does, it does, and I'm just maybe that's just me being confident in how I planned it. I spend enough time trying to make sure things are right. It's very rare that I feel like I've ever had that happen.
Yeah, I think it is really just stuff that we've more or less talked about already. I have had times where I've had like a single small level creature on a map that didn't need to be there. Um, and that's not necessarily that big of a deal, but it's annoying to have everyone roll initiative and plan out these moves and take this time when like your level 3 characters fighting a single kobold or whatever. It's like this is unnecessary. We don't need to do that. There's also been times where I feel like I'm running something theater of the mind and people aren't understanding, and I kind of wish maybe we would have started it out a little bit more structured. I guess something. This isn't necessarily like theater of the mind versus battle map, but more initiative versus just kind of like loosey goosey. A good example,
Yeah,
I think, is actually last night when Desmond got charmed, and then the party was trying to kind of like counteract him. But then he, like, part of the charm was that he has to protect the painting and is charmed by it. So then he was taking actions against the party, and there was a
yeah,
situation where I was like, I'm not going to have you guys roll initiative, just do whatever. But really, in my mind, I'm still like letting everyone get to act,
right.
and then characters are like, okay, I'm acting, so I'm just gonna do this and this, and then I'm like, oh, wait a second, I really need to let Desmond do a thing, and then I ended up really in a turn order, when I really just sort of said that there was a turn order, as opposed to
Right.
just like letting it go all loosey-goosey, because you were kind of, like, the party was kind of trying to act as if it was, and then I said there wasn't one, and then they acted as if it wasn't one, and then I'm like, wait, there should be one, though.
Right.
Like, I
It's
feel like that's
it's a
a
tough
situation there I
call.
messed up there.
Yeah, but
But
it was one of those where I don't think it was a mess up. It was going, okay, we've got several things going on. Now we're going to
yeah,
organize it, and I
yeah.
caught on to that, and I was actually grateful for it because I have to cast spells. I have to defend this my life. And if anybody knows me when I play a caster, I don't like
Hate
spending
using
my
those spell
spell
slots. Yeah,
slots unless I absolutely have to.
right.
And then I absolutely had to because now this painting is my baby doll. So I'm like literally hurting my party, trying to trap them in webs. It was just a nightmare for me.
Yeah.
But it's entertaining for everybody else to see my pain.
It was fun. It was fun. Well, that's our show. That's time. So, we're gonna go ahead and call it there. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us.
Yeah,
Those of
man.
you here live or watching later on or listening or whatever, thank you so much. We will be back here on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, with a fun little treat, a little amnesia one shot going on. I'm running for Steve's group. Just a fun little one shot. They do not know what their characters are, so they'll get
Be
to
fun.
they'll discover who they are as they play. It should be a lot of fun. And then you'll be able to catch Steve at Stevo the DMO potentially throughout the week. I know he's starting a job, so I'm not sure how much he'll be streaming, but
We'll have
here and
to. We're
there.
gonna probably have to workshop it, but yeah, I think for sure I'll be back Sunday. But I'm with the holidays and me just needing a little bit of a break. Not tonight, so.
Right on.
But yeah, we'll go. We may have to tweak it a little.
So Sunday, for sure, with a D&D game, I think, and then back here on Tuesday, and then of course next Wednesday, and we'll see you all then.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out.